Welcome to WFPC Podcasting, your local source for the heart and history of Pike County, Indiana. And now, here's your host, Randy Harris.
We are back with Kerry Kurt Phillips, and we're talking about how he was inspired to write some of these songs that we all love. I mentioned earlier, they're anthems for rural America, and we so appreciate how you put these images in our ear that we can appreciate. Let's go back to the early years when you were just being discovered as a songwriter. You had a George Jones cut, and it was a hit. I've still got neon in my veins.
Yeah, wow. You're digging deep here. The making me dig deep. The first song I told you about is "A Cold in Here," which is my first number one song.
Right.
But the first song I ever got cut. I mean, you talk about the grace of God and just goofy for that goofy bohunk from Southern Indiana. But my first, and this just makes my buddies mad, because I can always trump them, whenever they start bragging or something, I'll throw at the drum. I said, yeah, well, my first cut in Nashville was a George Jones cut, and it was, the first song I got cut was a George Jones song.
Where Tall Grass Grows.
Where the Tall Grass Grows.
Wow.
And,
that's kind of a sad song anyway, but you turn that over to Jones or Vern Gosdin, you're crying before you hit the chorus.
Oh, it was. I can see inside that writer's room, and just relive that moment. So it's so clear and vivid to me. The three of us who wrote that, none of us could get arrested at that time. It was a buddy of mine named Randy Boudreau, who's a pure Cajun from Louisiana, a real. He and a very talented, and another friend of mine, and Andy Spooner, who I wrote a lot with, and he's a California guy, but none of us could get arrested at that point. We were both just. Well, all three of us were full of passion, and we would work. We were trying to kill something and drag it home at that time. And I would leave my wife in the morning. I would get up and leave the house, and I would have to be at my first writing appointment. When I got up, my wife was already. When I got home every night, my wife was already getting up, getting ready to go to work. And my first writing appointments, all writing appointments in Nashville, generally started at 10 o'clock at that time. It was just that was the default time, And so now there were always crazy guys that would start at, 7 or whatever, but so I'd started writing at 10, and all of us, those guys and others, would start writing at 10, and would write all day, all night, and when I was coming in, was at 5 in the morning when my wife was getting ready. And I did that for years, the first at least 5 years, Like I said, we had to kill something and drag it home, and that was the work ethic at that time. Because everybody on those three streets, were there to, if you weren't going to write it, somebody else was writing, and it was just dog eat dog, and everybody was wearing milk bone underwear, and that was just how intense it was. It was just it was unbelievable.
But that goes back to your work ethic of selling Grit magazines on a street corner in Henderson.
I always said when I got there, I said, there may be people more talented than me there, but I was never going to let them outwork me. Well, I was wrong, because they did. There were guys that outworked me, for sure. Boudreau was one that outworked me,
I'd rather build a fire and crawl across it slow than to face those burning memories where the tall grass grows.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, that was that Jones cut it, and when they cut it, that was on CBS Records at the time, which later became Sony. But my publisher, the president of the publishing company, made Sony, CBS, made them sign a contract that said, because Jones was kind of cold right then, this was before Rocking Chair,
Right.
but he was kind of in a cold spot right there at CBS Records, where he produced all the huge monster stuff there. They made them sign a record promising that it would be the first release on his new album that was coming out, that it would be a single. And so when that, like, that was very early on. I mean, like I said, it was my first cut that I'd ever gotten by a legitimate record label and a legitimate artist, and it was Jones.
Wow.
And they signed it, said, we promise it's going to be single, the first single. So they gave it to him, gave it to Jones. He recorded it, and of course it's a great recording, and it was an album cut, and they never did single it.
Wow.
Never did. But it's what are you going to do? You're going to tell, then it sounds silly after you think about it, because, they're the golden goose, and you're not going to pitch them any more songs. Is that what you're going to do?
It got so much attention, maybe not from the producers, but it got attention from Vern Gosdin,
Right.
Ricky Shelton.
Yeah, Ricky Van Shelton. Yeah, that's right. The song people, the song men of the town, and those people who thought song was king, and back in the day they always said that the song's always king. The most important thing, we don't care who wrote it or what publishing company has it or whose interest is in it, is what it's all about. The best song wins. But those people, he got a lot of recognition as just for the quality of the song. Like you said, Vern cut it,
Wow.
and what a great recording he had. He didn't single it though. He didn't single
What about
it. And then
Ricky
Ricky Van
Van?
Shelton cut it, and he didn't single it, And you really don't,
Yeah.
you really don't make any money if it's not singled, Back then, you didn't. But it was, it certainly got, and it got cut again, I think I told you that even, I can't remember if it was Bo or if it was Luke Duke. I never could get
Tom
those.
Wopat.
Tom Wopat cut it.
Yeah.
And there was the other one, Schneider, that
John
was actually
Schneider.
this great singer and had hits on country radio, But the other guy cut it. So the song was just destined to never be a single, It just
What
it's
an
album cut.
incredible song, though.
There's other guys that
job.
cut it, but it's not as significant,
So shortly after that, I Don't Need Your Rocking Chair, Jones cut that.
He did.
And that did what you wanted it to do, didn't it?
Yeah, and that's when you said something about songs that surprised me that became successful, and that was one. I just never dreamed that song would be a hit. I don't know why. It was just, it didn't take near the amount of work and time to write it. It didn't. It's just one of my co-writers, I'll tell you the story behind that song if you're interested. One of my co-writers, Billy Yates, and the other one who was a monster.
Frank Dykes.
Frank Dykes, yeah, who's got he was like Dean Dillon, he was responsible for Strait's career early on and a monster writer. He was the guy, one of those guys that just has to be known by his only one name. They just called him Dykes, and everybody knew who he was talking about, But we started writing on that song, and Billy, the reason we started that song, that's the only one of the few songs I ever wrote that was targeted for one artist. A lot of writers do that. They target the song specifically for an artist when they write. And I always said, no, I don't do that. I just write the best song I can and then cast it, and let the pluggers and the pitchers, let them decide who they think would be best singing it, And of course, everybody starts with the platinum guys first anyway. That's who, right. And then after they all reject the song, they start going down to gold sellers and then to the new artist, But
can't put this possum in a cage.
That's right. But the reason we were able to write that song and the reason it was such a huge success is that Billy Yates was a hairdresser and did hair on Music Row. He was starving too. He was trying to be a successful writer and artist, but he had been, he was a man, and is a man, but he was a hairdresser and he cut Jones' hair.
That was quite a head of hair to cut.
He cut Jones' hair and became friends with Jones and Nancy, his wife. But when he came to that right, he came with intel. When we sat down that morning, he said, I cut Jones' hair last week, or whenever it was. I can't remember if he said it was a couple of days, but he said, and Jones needs a big song. And they got this, he had a song that he recorded with Dolly Parton. And Jones had done a duet with Parton on CBS Records. And they dropped their song. They were going to release it as a single, and they dropped Jones from the album, and the song didn't come out. And they recut the song with Dolly and Ricky Van doing the duo, Ricky Van Shelton. And they put it out as Rockin' Chairs and Rockin' Babies. You remember that song?
Yes, I do.
That's the song they released. And it was supposed to be Jones on it with Dolly. And Jones was mad about it.
That inspired it.
And so we said, we need to give George something.
I don't need no rocking chair.
And of course, they dropped him, so he had a new label that picked him up after all the years at CBS, So we came up with I Don't Need Your Rocking Chair. We don't need that song. And the song came out, and all the radio people knew about that, what had happened with the song dropping it and everything else. So they got involved, and Jerry House leaked it and got a copy of the original one that Jones and Dolly had sang on and played that and played our song. It was a big thing, But anyway, what was the big thing about it? That Jones got to tell CBS Records, I don't need your rocking chair. You had George Foreman in the video, that came out and did it. And
I didn't watch videos. I don't remember that, but I heard the song.
You'll see me in that video. That's one of my cameo appearances.
I'll find it.
Videos, yeah. But it was quite the deal because they had just about every artist in town sing on the thing with him. So that was a vocal event of the year at the CMAs also, And
he showed CBS. He showed his old record label.
Yeah. And that's the story behind I Don't Need Your Rocking Chair. It was also for the senior PGA tour, used that as a song for their tour. Played it at every broadcast. I Don't Need Your Rocking Chair for the senior tour. Lots of other promotions that it was used in.
It's a great
commercial
song.
Promotions, yeah.
This is Kyle Hathaway with Hathaway Excavating and Rock Yard. We have the equipment and crew to take care of your earth moving needs, septic installs, and digging out what you need dug out. We also deliver rock, and we maintain and pump septics. We're just a couple miles away. Call Hathaway Excavating at 812-582-2646.
WFPC is sponsored by the Destin Schnare Agency for Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance. Destin and his staff, including Tyler Dillon, are right here in Pike County. It's face-to-face, and they guide you through the process of insurance. Whether it's home, auto, farm, commercial, or life, the Destin Schnare Agency is here to help. Call the Destin Schnare Agency at 812-766-1117 or stop in at the new office on State Road 61 at Petersburg. This program is sponsored in part by Dr. Clint Schultz with Schultz Eye Care in Petersburg. Schultz Eye Care offers comprehensive dilated eye exams, contact exams, a huge selection of name brand frames for glasses and sunglasses, and if you buy a pair, get a second pair at 50% off and a year's supply of contacts at 25% off. Schultz Eye Care is an independent office and are open through the week except Tuesday afternoon. The phone number is 812-354-9400. That kind of segues us into Prop Me Up Beside the Jukebox. I ain't afraid of dying. It's the thought of being dead.
Man,
That's a fun song.
a lot of we had so much feedback on that song, the letters and people's replying to the publishing company and the record label about that song, about all the instances across America where their loved one had passed, and they actually did that. They actually followed the lyrics of that song, sent videos of it and everything. And it was, like I said, it was crazy. But another one of those songs, that just, it started out with an idea about, I can't think of that name. There was a movie out.
Yeah, Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah.
That's where the idea started with. So
We move into about 1994, and Joe Diffie. So like a fool, I jumped the fence just to see what I could find, and then you come up with In My Own Backyard.
yeah,
Another outstanding.
another one of my favorite songs. It was. I think that song charted. I think it might have got to. Seems like it got to 18 or 20, and I thought that song would have been a top 10 song, but
The next one did. I got my first truck when I was 3, drove 100,000 miles on my knees, hauling marbles and rocks, and thought twice before I hauled a Barbie doll bed for the girl next door.
yeah, that song was a number one for 5 weeks. So I was a record setter at that time for Diffie, and it was pretty sensational. Pretty sensational. Lots of, we had a Ford truck commercial in the middle of the Super Bowl.
I remember that.
Yeah, and the Olympics in Atlanta used the song in the opening ceremonies. That song was used in the opening ceremonies of what year was that? I can't remember what year it was, but anyway.
So I assume you are a pickup man?
Yeah, I think I'll always be a pickup man. It was funny that you and I were talking about parodies the other day, and the parodies that came out from that song, there were, there's a Detroit station up there that had this, the morning show. I don't know how long they played it. It was, I kept getting people telling me about it, but there's just something women like about a Yugo man. And then there was a station in Florida that had the morning crew was doing. There's just something women like about a minivan man. And all those things went off everywhere, and every Ford dealership in America had their own, small homemade commercial made out of it, and it was pretty ubiquitous there for a while.
Yeah. If we can keep looking at your song list, maybe we should just sleep on it. Tim McGraw comes on the scene. And I got an empty feeling when that moving van pulled up. Is that kind of a sister to Where the Tall Grass Grows? Not really.
Never thought about it like that, but I just had that, prior to that day, the day before, I had that kept bouncing through my head over and over, you know, maybe, baby, 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 maybe, and it kept playing that over and over and over again, and the little melody that went with it. And Jerry Laster and I, it's the same guy I wrote Down on the Farm with, and several Tanya things with, and it was, that's another song that just came really fast, and it's just always, that's, you know, that's kind of a song we had to shift, he and I both, because we were so stone cold country oriented, you know, and people were wanting, you know, more, a little tougher edge stuff, you know, and we had to step up and write some of that stuff, you know, to stay alive, you know. You have to be able to, you know, everybody doesn't want to
Adapt.
Yeah, everybody doesn't. You know, that's why Baskin Robbins makes 32 flavors. You know, you've got, if you can produce, you know, more than one type of song, you know, you've got to. It's a business.
Yeah,
it's a business. That's
bigger
not
range.
my favorite thing to sit down and listen to, but between he and I, we had one of those. I was telling you about, you know, there's those standing appointments that you make when you're writers. You know, you get your clique of guys that you can always produce with, you know, that you always feel like, if I have to have a hit song today, if they call me up and this is the guy,
What do I pitch?
one of the guys I call you. And he was always, you know, one of my guys that he and I had great success, and we could always count on, if we stayed in the room long enough together, could do that. We would come out with something, and that would fit, and he made incredible demos. He had a home studio, and he had talent. He had more talent as Pinky than most people did. He was a groove monster, could always come up with a different groove, and so that song, but that was a follow-up, you know, that was after, of course, after the first cut that we had gotten by McGraw was, you know, Down on the Farm was the first thing that we had recorded by him, and that's a totally different kind of song than, you know, Sleep on It was. So, but
so many more as I looked out my Kerry Kurt playlist. You know, you had a #1 with Billy Ray Cyrus, It's All the Same to Me, in 1997. You had Notes from Home. You wrote that with Jimmy Woolsey. The Chapmans did it.
yeah, you know, that's fun. That's always been I forget about that song. It's a bluegrass song, you know, and I kind of grew up in that genre, you know, and that's the thing that we wrote, and really never got any credit for, you know. But that's the way with a lot of those small bluegrass record labels, you know. They don't do the due diligence, and they don't
promote you.
Well, it's not only that they don't promote it, but they just don't have the funds to even do the due diligence that's required to clear a record and to get the right to record it and to get the label copy correct and everything. So if you look at the label copy on that album, it doesn't say anything about us writing it. We're not even listed on there. And there was, my publishing company, you know, was really hot about that, you know, and after a while they just, you know,
It was hard to confirm it. I knew it, but it was. Yeah, I had to do some typing to find.
It was always kind of tainted by that. But and I never got to. I always wanted to meet those people, and I never got to. You know, it wasn't more recently. You know, like I said, I love that genre so much, and we just got done talking about, you know, how you know, Baskin Robbins and 31 flavors, and I always felt like that I could write, you know, any of those subcategories of country, you know, whether it was Western swing or bluegrass or my favorite, I think one of my, Diffie did a bluegrass album, you know, later on, and I had a thing on there that I was pretty proud of that did well, and also a Dora Lawson Quicksilver thing that I think it was Grammy nominated that he did for a live performance, but so when I've had the chance to, you know, and they're not profitable to write, you know, and most Nashville writers, I hate to say that, but I'm just here to tell you the truth, you know, they just they can't take the time to do it, you know, because you're writing for a publisher, and the publisher's got to make money, you know, and they don't encourage you to write that stuff, you know, and we just, those of us who love bluegrass, we do it in spite of that, you know, and try to send good material to those people, you know.
I'll burn up 3 cigarettes before I have my first smoke. That's just Jesse.
You met one of the writers to that.
Was that Jason?
Just recently, yeah, Jason Matthews, that was here at the Ruatan thing at Dogwell. He and I, you know, like I said earlier about writing with McCraig, you know, if you can write with an artist, you know, you kind of step ahead because you have the ability to, you know, you don't have to fight to try to get to the artist and get access to pitch him something, you know. So that's a song we wrote with
Kevin Denny.
Yeah, and he loved the song from the start, you know, and he didn't stick around long as an artist, but that song, I thought it would do better, but I think it was a top 20 song. Kevin was a great singer. I mean, he was a Kentucky boy, you know, and great background in bluegrass too. You know, his background was in bluegrass. And Kevin Denny and bluegrass people know him. And
a song of yours that gives me chills. Life Happened. Tammy Cochran.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned in there, it's a story of broken dreams, and mentioned in there she's selling videos at a store in Eastland Mall.
Right.
I know where that is.
Yeah, we always like to put, you know, sometimes when we're co-writing, you know, we'll each try to put some local names in, you know, and we say, oh, I got one there. No, I'm going to put it. But you'll find a lot of those, you know. There's a song I wrote about that Trace Atkins wrote. I was thinking as we were driving here today, I was thinking about something that had Pike County in it. There's a song I wrote that Trace cut. It talks about the Pike.
Well,
What was it? I'm trying to think the name of the song.
it's a good thing I don't.
Yeah, it's a good thing I don't drink.
Judge, due to the fact that you sent my court-appointed attorney to rehab, I'll be representing myself. And then, according to the Pike County Press.
According to the Pike County Press, yeah.
It just...
she just lit up a cigarette. According to the Pike County Press, she just lit up a cigarette. Long about the time. I can't remember it. But
tell me about
those things are fun.
Yeah, honky tonk anatomy. That's fun. Your drinking bones connected.
Yeah. Gosh, another what they call, you know, a lot of my songs they used to label early on. They tried to label me as, they said, well, he's, and of course for the stuff I put out, you know. kind of did away with that. They started to label me as a novelty writer. Say, well, that's a novelty song, you know. They wanted to call Pickup Man and prop me up novelty songs. And I told them, I said, yeah, the novelty about it is that they're so multi-platinum, and, you know.
Right.
Yeah, that's a novelty, you know, because at the time, you know, he was doing good to get gold records, you know. Of course, till Garth came along, and then he would sell, you know, quadruple platinum, you know, and kind of turn things around. But at that time, the platinum records were hard to get for country artists.
And a novelty, I consider a joke. Your songs are pretty deep. I mean, they paint that picture.
But I always made the argument. I always thought about growing up and all the incredible songs with humor that the country format had, and it's like they almost got too serious.
And sometimes you got to listen for it.
Too serious, and you know, you and I, you know, talk about, you know, we can talk about, you know, may the bluebird of paradise fly up your nose,
Jimmy.
Yeah, Jimmy. I mean, my gosh, I remember singing that as a kid, you know, and other things that, you know, Snaky Snake, and you know, what happened to all those songs that we all sang as kids, you know? And I remember listening to the radio and watching my dad shave in the morning, and then singing those songs and listening to them. But those things disappeared from the format, you know, and I always wanted to write those things.
So this one's a pretty serious song, and this program is sponsored in part by the Log Inns Farm, Bed, and Breakfast, just 3 miles west of Petersburg off of State Road 56. It's peaceful, quiet, and you're surrounded by nature in a traditional farm environment. It's nestled in the countryside of a southern Indiana working farm growing grain, hay, and livestock. It incorporates 2 vintage log cabins. Call the Log Inns Farm, Bed, and Breakfast at 812-354-2192. If you are considering buying or selling your home or property, call Harris Real Estate. Real estate is local, and we are too. Over the years, Harris Real Estate has listed and sold hundreds of properties right here. We have clients looking for homes and properties. We know the business, and we know Pike County. 612 East Main Street, Petersburg. Text or call 812-380-1065. There's a lot of summer dust in Pike County, and when you wash your vehicle on a regular basis, you're easier to see. You preserve the life of your vehicle, help maintain its value, protect its paint, prevents corrosion, and it just looks better. It still only takes 6 quarters to get it started, or your credit card. That's what it's always been. Stop by Petersburg Car Wash today, 401 South 9th Street, Petersburg. Keep it clean. Man, it starts out with a rough tone. You're having a serious discussion with somebody, and my daughter Jenna loves this song. This is the one she said he's a diva. But you're having a very serious discussion with the guy. You took my wife, my car, my house, my tools. Oh, one more thing. Do you want fries with that?
Yeah.
It's genius.
I tried to write that song, I bet, for at least 5 years, I bet. I threw that, you know, and that's what we do, you know, when you go to a writing appointment, you know, and you show up there, and every writer they either have a book of hooks, they call them a book of hooks, or a book of ideas, or they have, nowadays, of course, they have a laptop full of ideas and list after list, and you'll sit there and you go, how about da-da-da-da-da-da? What else you got? Da-da-da-da-da. And what you got? Da-da-da. And you could do that for hours. And you sit there and you say, well, let me think about that. And you concentrate on it, and you think of every possible way in the world to flip it around or to turn it into something, because there sounds like there's something in there. So anyway, I'd done that for 5 years with that title. I knew it was a hit title. I mean, I just knew it was a hit title. Didn't mean it'd be a hit song, but I knew it was a hit title. If I could find somebody to write it with me. And Bethard just he just heard it immediately.
He loved
He
it.
said, well, heck yeah. I said to him, I said, I've been trying to find some fool to write that with me for 5 years, after we got done with it, He laughed and he took it to, I want to say Mindy, but anyway, to McGraw's office and got it cut. That's all him that got it cut. Yeah, he carried it in straight to him. So I never dreamed in the world that McGraw would cut that. It wasn't like anything he was recording, or looking for.
Which ones did you know would be a hit?
I thought Is It Cold in Here would be a hit. I thought that would because I wrote it with the artist Joe Diffie and he sang the demo.
And that was early on. That was
the first hit, But man, there's so many that I thought would be a hit that never were, and that's the beauty of it. Things that you never thought would be a hit, people hear different things in a song, and I try to tell people when I used to do a lot of songwriter seminars, I'd tell them, in order to be a hit, it has to go through that gauntlet we just talked about. This person has to like it. The producer has to like it. That not the quality has to be a hit, but just to be a hit. It has to get past a producer. It's got to get past the record label. It's got to get past A&R. It's got to get past the promotion people. It's got to get past the drummer. May hate the song while they're tracking the song, and he said, man, I just can't find the right groove on this song. Let's do something else. And that's all it takes for a producer to say, okay, let's go to the next one on the list. Well, we might come back to that later. And it's gone. It's just, the artist's wife, he could say, well, here's the songs we're recording tomorrow. And she said, oh, I hate that. He said, what's your song? Thanks. It's gone, That's all it takes. But I tell people that as far as you're concerned, a song has to trigger some emotion. When you're writing a song, if you're not pulling at some heartstring, when they listen to that, if you're not making somebody sad, if you're not making somebody feel patriotic, if you're not making somebody angry, if you're not making somebody want to take their fist and smash it on the table, or if you're not making somebody want to drive faster when they hear that song, if you're not making somebody feel nostalgia, and that's the strongest emotion in the world, is nostalgia, remembering something way back where they went to school, or that is the strongest emotion in the world. And that's why you hear so many songs about nostalgia.
Takes you back.
I was almost home. That's nostalgia, and it's so if you're not writing a song that triggers some emotion, or you've got to put some angst in that song and build something and get somebody to feel something. You got to make them hurt, or you got to make them feel good, And if you can't trigger emotion by writing it and by blending the perfect melody and the perfect time signature and the perfect production and delivery, you can do all that, and then the singer who you had sing the demo doesn't get that across. That's the thing about a singer. A singer can sing, they can hit every note perfect, they can sing it in pocket, they can sing on the front of the beat, on the back of the beat, they can mod, they can do anything, but they can't sell the lyric. The singer has to sell the lyric, So all those things have to come together, and then you might get a hit. And that used to be up to the public. You know that. It used to be up to the public. Is it up to the public anymore on radio? Is it up to who calls in?
Used to be 45s.
It used to be that 45 there in your hand. Used to be up to the public that called in and the demand and say, oh, play that, play that, play that. Or,
I remember Baby's Got Her Blue Jeans On. I'd get a call for that every 10 minutes.
I had a buddy, I was the best man in the wedding. We drove to North Georgia one time to see one of my best buddies down there, and his sister had married him. Anyway, he sang that song all the way to North Georgia. They sang it over and over and over again. He was in the military. This guy said, man, you just do not sound right singing that song. But anyway, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. you know. But that's what it's got to be a hit. That's what it's got to be.
All pieces have to come together.
And it's boy,
So
that's a lot of moving parts.
I've heard you sing.
And then, we didn't even talk about,
Yeah.
then he goes in and, you know that guy at the radio station, who's that guy? Not even before it gets to the DJ, he gets to
Program director.
the program director, and he says, I don't hear it. Or he just doesn't want to play. Or maybe he got made by somebody in promotions, or somebody at the label made him mad over something. Maybe they didn't give him enough swag. Maybe they didn't sponsor their annual concert that they do and send a couple of artists out, young artists, to play it, right?
So all politics.
Yeah. Yeah. So you write it and you say, yeah, that's a hit. It ain't a hit till it's, you know, till the money's in the mailbox. So
If I take people an offer and they agree to it, I always say, don't count that money until it's in your fingers.
and you got to be tough to be a songwriter, you know, because you get right up there to the edge, and you know, like my buddy Jason once wrote a great song. You met him. He wrote a wonderful song, another song that'll never be cut. But he wrote a song. He'd been in town about 3 or 4 years, you know, and I met him, and he's still green as a. But he, you know, Jason can write the truth real good, and Jason wrote, "This town has teeth." This song called "This Town Has Teeth" in it, and it's true, you know, because it knocks you down, knocks you down, knocks you down. I tell people that they talk about. You talk about songs like "Pick Up Man." There was that #1 song for 5 weeks. I finished the demo on that song, and like you said, I thought this is a smash. This thing is a smash. I said, this gotta be. Joe Diffie was playing in Brown County, Little Nashville Opry.
Yeah.
He had a dual show, 2 shows on I think it was a Friday night. Had 2 shows he's doing there. And I finished that demo, and I drove to, first I played it for my publisher, the person that paid me to write, you know, and I'd already had hits, you know, I had platinum albums and I had millions of records sold and all that stuff, you know, I had some gravitas, you know, and some credibility, and this town has teeth, you know, and I went in there and played them that song, and I was sitting probably, his desk was probably sitting about here in his chest, and I was sitting against that wall there on the couch, and he turned around after the pick up, man, my demo out of the slot of the CD, and I just carried it in there, and he threw it at me, and it hit on the wall, slid down, landed on the floor. I leaned over and picked it up. He said, "What else you got? Is that it?"
Wow.
And he started telling me why it was such a silly song and how awful it was. And the other co-owner of the pub shop was sitting over there. He said, "That's stupid." He said, "That's stupid." He said to me, he said, "You know what?" He said, because the line in the songs, you know, if it wasn't for trucks, we wouldn't have tailgates. He said, "That's stupid." He said, "If it wasn't for apple trees, we wouldn't have apples." And I said, "You two guys are so far removed from the real people out there.
That's right.
And the people that I write music for." I said, "You guys are up in your ivory towers.
That's
and
right.
You're driving your Lexuses and I said, you just don't get it." And I went home, and I was on dialysis at the time, you know. And I went home and I told my wife, I said, "I'm going to Southern Indiana." And I had a pickup truck. And in the back of that, I threw a box of dialysis liquids and because I was doing peritoneal dialysis, it's where you put tubes in your stomach, you know, and everything. And I hung bag of I was rolling down the interstate, and I pull over and I'd hang a bag of dialysis fluid.
Wow.
Hook in there and keep driving until I got to Brown County, and I got there just about right maybe 10 minutes before the end of the first show, and I was sitting there by Joe's tour bus when he came walking out the back, with the road manager beside him, and a couple of guys. Of course, I knew them all, and he walked up. Joe said, "What's going on?" I said, "Play something, on the bus." Of course, I'd been his tour manager, prior to that and everything else. And he got on the bus and said, because he was fixing to cut an album, I said, "I got a song that I want you to hear." And he closed the door, and of course cranked up the incredible sound system in a tour bus, and he stuck that thing in there, and he listened to it, and he cut it off, and he said, "I'm cutting that." I said, "I thought so." And I went back, got back in the truck, and I drove back to Nashville. And, those were two guys right there but that's, what I mean? People hear songs differently, and it's just such a, if I one time, me and my another co-writer man one time jumped in the car and drove to see Diffie in Florida because we had a song to try to get on the album. And they said they were going to cut it. When we drove all the way down there, we turned around and drove back. And without any sleep, it was a long way. And they said they were going to cut it, ended up not cutting the song. But that's just, it's just dog eat dog, like I said, and who can outwork the other person? And you just never, they tell you, no, it's horrible, no, normal. And some people accept that. And you got to be able to take criticism, and then you got to be able to use it and rewrite. It's not about writing. I tell people, it's not about writing a song. Anybody can write a song. Anybody can write a song. If you can hum, you can write a melody. You can, you've written a melody, and you can put words in it. That's a song. Is it a commercial song? Probably not. Can you write a commercial song? Can you write a song that universally is loved and that millions of people love and want to play over and over again and want to pay money for it and want to play it over and over and over and want to tell their friends about and want to wear out a CD and buy another one and then say, I wore out 3 of those things. Of course, there's none to wear out now. But can you write a commercial song? That's the key. Can you write a commercial song? A lot of people come to town and say, I write songs. And they do. They do write songs. But can you write a commercial song?
Who's going to buy it?
Yeah, exactly.
And
they say, well, Mom loves it, and Grandma says it's great, and Grandpa, and all my friends say it's great. I say, I tell them in songwriter seminar, I say, I'll tell you what you do. You make a copy of that song, and next time you're riding around with your buddy, he knows you're trying to be a songwriter, and he knows you've written songs. I know you've played songs for him, and he tells you they're great and everything. And you just leave it laying there and put a different label on it than your name on it and all that stuff. And I said, you leave it laying there on the dash or somewhere close to where you can stick it in, or even if it's on nowadays, you'll have the MP3 file in there or whatever, and let him scroll through it. And you say, what's this? Say, oh, that's a buddy of mine. He's trying to be a songwriter too, like me, and that's a song he wrote. And it's don't, you stick it in, listen to it. Tell me what you think. I think it's awful. I think the thing's horrible. Stick it in, put it in there, and see what it says.
Then you
see what it says. How brave are you? Stick it in there, yeah. Stick it in there. Tell him it sucks, and stick it in there and see if he says he agrees with you. Or see if he says, no, man, hey, this is really good. Don't sing it with your voice, dummies. You know what I mean? Have somebody else sing it, and see it, hold it up against, put it up against those, the songs on the radio. You got to be objective. And it's so hard to take something you create as a professional songwriter. You have to write this thing, and you have to say, you spend hours on it, writing it, and we'll all do it in the business. And we say, and we listen to it, and we said, we have wasted our time, our day. We should have stopped this after the first,
hour.
Half verse, yeah, then we should have just thrown it away and started something else. We wasted this. It's not worth. We're not going to spend any money to demo it. Nobody ever hear it, and they go in the trash. You know. But you got to be able to edit. You got to have self-discipline and say. You got to. It's an economy of words. It's an economy of words, and you've got 3 minutes. You got 3 minutes to introduce a subject, a topic, a place, an environment, a mood, introduce the characters, get it to a climax, and get home in 3 minutes. And you got less than that. You got that when you get it to radio. Because, you know, if that thing's not done in 3 minutes, they got to have room for advertising. You've used up too much of their advertising space nowadays. If you get a 3-minute and 30-minute song recorded, you've done something. It's really good. And even when you go to pitch that song to your publisher, they let them give you the money to go get it recorded so you can play it somebody, to get a demo made. And then you play it for these people at the record label who are screening for songs for these artists. You're going to get about maybe 15 seconds. You might get, you know, a bar. You might get
scrolling
they're
videos.
They're going to be listening, and if 15 seconds of that song you haven't hooked them, they're going to cut it off. So you don't waste in those demos. You don't waste you don't put an intro in there with some big crazy guitar lead or something. You better get to the meat and get to it fast. You know, the producer will put the guitar, the intro on it, and the turnarounds, you know, and the repeat choruses on it and all that stuff. You better keep it, you know, in its condensed version.
Pithy,
that's right. Because they've got a stack of those on their desk or on their computer now. There's been 100 emailed to them every minute, you know, people sending in songs for this album project and that album project and that other project. And if they click that on play and they listen to it, they move that mouse and they click it on listen to it, 15 seconds, you might get 20 seconds if you've said something. So that very first lyric, you better catch them and make them want to hear something more about it. It better be creative, it better be catchy, or you better stimulated pulled at some heartstring, triggered an emotion that will make them leave that on long enough to maybe you'll get a verse and a chorus if you're lucky.
Wow, what a lesson.
If you're lucky.
What a great lesson you've given us. Just, gosh, I appreciate all you've done.
Well, you're more than welcome.
Thanks again to your cousins Josh and Robert for.
They're pretty special to me.
They are special guys.
Yes, they are. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kerry.
Enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of WFPC Podcasting. The program is brought to you by Hathaway Excavating and Rock Yard, Schultz Eye Care, the Log Ends Farm Bed and Breakfast, the Dustin Schnare Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance Agency, Harris Real Estate, and Petersburg Car Wash. Please thank our sponsors for their continued investment in Pike County. A new program appears each Friday on WFPC Podcasting, exploring the people, information, and news right here in Pike County. See you next week.
Thanks for watching WFPC Podcasting, your local source for the heart and history of Pike County, Indiana. From back roads to town centers, we bring you the voices, stories, and news that shape our community. Join us on this journey through the past, present, and future of Pike County, Indiana. Tune in next week for the next episode of WFPC Podcasting.